Good morning. Installment number 3 on our lectures. And so you're going to start on this page in your packet. What I need to show you is that this is technically the next page, but what I'd like for you to do is tear it off and then flip it over so you can, and then we'll restaple so that you can use these 2 pages side by side. So my apologies that it wasn't put together well. And so that's where we're going to start today. So we're putting together supply and demand. When we put these 2 curves together, what will happen is they will cross, which at that point where they cross is called the equilibrium. That's where the level at which supply is the same as demand. So supply meets demand, and we're going to practice. So we're going to be talking about oil. And this is or gasoline, excuse me. This is exactly what's in your packet. I've just kind of taken it in chunks. So let's look at part 1. It says a group of economists studied the gasoline market. They wanted to find out how many gallons consumers would buy at each day at various prices. So let's say that here's the price of gas, and this is the demand of gas. Sorry. This is the demand for gas. So on your paper, you're going to graph that just like we did before. So this information is called the demand schedule. Plot this data on the blank graph that looks like this, okay? This line is called the demand curve, and you're going to label it with a D1, okay? And then the question says, what is the relationship between price and the quantity of gas demanded? So in other words, what is the price doing? Oh my goodness. The price is going up, and as the price goes up, we know it's inversely. So as price goes up, demand goes down, okay? So that's the answer to that little section. So if you'll pause the video and go ahead and plot those things. So you're going to start at 40 cents, then 55 million gallons are demanded. And so go ahead and pause the video and go ahead and do that now. Okay, and then you're back. You're going to go to part 2 that says, economists also surveyed sellers to determine how many gallons of gasoline they would be willing to sell at various prices. They found that there's the price of gas on the left, right here, and then here is the supply, okay? This information is called the supply schedule. You're going to plot that data on your curve, on your graph, this page. And then this line is actually called the supply curve, and you're going to label it with an S1. And the relationship between price and quantity supplied, the price is going up, and so as the price goes up, then more is supplied. It's not that they're giving more, it's there's more sitting in those big tanks at the gas station. So take a minute, pause the video, and plot that out. Okay, we're back. And there's your initial demand line, and either at the top or the bottom, you need to go ahead and label that D1. And then your supply line looks here, and you're going to label that S1. You always want to label, okay? And then following along on your worksheet, number 3 says, according to the graph, the market clearing price for gasoline is, whoa, my fingers got in the way. I think that's at 80 cents, right? And then the number of gallons in gasoline bought and sold at that price is 40 million. So you're going to write that in here. So 80 cents at 40 million gallons. And you can disregard number 4 because we're not going to go that into detail. Okay, changes in demand. Moving along on your worksheet. Assume that big gas guzzling cars are the latest fad because consumers buy so many gas guzzlers. They want to buy 30 million more gallons of gasoline per day at every price. For example, 40 cents a gallon, people now want to buy 85 million gallons rather than 55. So you're going to plot this new demand schedule. If I were you, I would use a different color, and you're going to label that one D2. You're going to create the new equilibrium point, and write down the price and the gasoline there at number 5. Okay? And then you're going to be doing the same thing in supply. So assume that 2 oil-producing countries get into a war and destroy each other's oil wells. Because of this, sellers are willing to sell 20 million fewer gallons of gas per day. For example, at 40 cents, per gallon. Sellers are willing to sell only 5 million gallons rather than 25. So you're going to plot these two. Well, really, you're going to end up this is going to be your new line. The prices are still the same, but you're going to plot that, label it S2, and write down the new equilibrium where those two new lines meet, Again, in that other color, that's going to be a little bit helpful, okay? And then label that one E3. So there's the new demand line, and so you this was your original, and you went to the right, so that is an increase, right? And this point here is your new equilibrium labeled E2, and you got to write down that that's maybe $1.10 at 52 gallons or so, okay? And then there's your new supply line. You're going to label that one S2, but this is S2, and then here's your equilibrium 3, okay? So E3. And because here's your supply line, original supply line, we move to the left, that makes it a decrease, as was mentioned in the text. Okay? And then, are we not doing the part at the bottom of that worksheet? Excuse me. Let's go down here. If you want to try to, oh, that's okay. We'll move on. Okay, we're going to practice on this page, which ends up being the very last page of your packet. So flip over your graphing that you just did. And it says, a frost has killed the expected juice crop of oranges in Florida. Refer to the graphs above. So we are working on just equilibriums here as good practice before we practice tomorrow. So number 1 says, if you've had a frost kills much of the expected juice crop of oranges in Florida, then is that going to affect, let's look at number 1, and it says, circle the correct words. There will be an increase or decrease in the demand or supply of oranges. So let's start with the second piece of that, which is demand or supply. Let's figure that one out first. So will the frost affect demand or will it affect supply? It's going to affect supply, so you're going to circle supply. And is it going to increase or decrease the supply? It's going to decrease because you are killing off all of those oranges, okay? So on graph A, this one up here, you're going to label, which is to the left on your paper, you're going to draw in the new demand curve. I'm sorry, supply curve, excuse me. And again, you got to move to the left or the right because of a decrease. That's to the left. So here's your old supply curve. You're going to draw a new one just anywhere over here. Okay, that's going to create a new equilibrium. In fact, you know what? I'm going to do that on my paper. I think it's going to be easier than the. Okay, so here we are. Sorry. Okay, so it's going to affect the supply, and it's going to decrease. So again, if you want to remind yourself, an increase is to the right and a decrease is left, okay? So we said supply, so here's our initial supply line. We're going to pick a spot anywhere and draw a new, all right? And here's your new equilibrium. If I were you, I would label this one E1 and this one E2. And supply 2. Also, a good suggestion is to dotted line. This is your price 1 and your quantity 1. Okay. So number 2 says, on the graph, draw a new demand supply curve, which we did, and label it S1 or D1, whichever, S2, D2, which we did. So based on this new equilibrium, okay, this is Q2 and price 2, right? So it's asking you, will there be an increase or decrease in the quantity of oranges demanded or supplied? And we know it's supplied, and that has gone closer to 0, so that is a decrease. There'll be, okay, and then really what would happen to the price? You know, the price would go up as well, okay? Number 4 says there will be an increase or decrease in the demand or supply of apples as a result of the frost. Well, you're wondering what in the world that has to do. That's this quote, this one. Apples are a substitute for oranges. So if we know that there are fewer supplied oranges, what's going to happen to apples? Is that going to increase the demand or the supply? Let's start with that first. It's going to be a demand issue. There's going to be an increase in demand, and so we'll circle both of those. Let's go back. I should have done this first. E1 and quantity 1. Sorry. Price 1. Okay? So now we know that it's a increase in demand. So we're going to move to the right of our demand curve. So we're going to pick a spot, any spot, doesn't matter. New demand curve, right? And label it to D2 and E2, which is what number 5 is asking us to do. So we're going to do this to make us easier to answer those questions. Okay, so we just did number 5. Number 6 says, circle the correct words. There'll be an increase or decrease in the quantity of apples supplied or demanded, and we know it's demanded. And based on this, quantity went up. So there's an increase. Okay, now, based on what we've drawn in, what will happen to the market price of apples? Apples went up. The market price of oranges, those went up. The quantity of oranges bought and sold, that went down. And the quantity of apples bought and sold went up. Okie dokie. All right, that's the end of today's, and tomorrow you'll be getting a practice sheet on your own.